on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call the Finance Committee portion of our joint meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, and a quorum of finance is present.
At the time of 5:15, I'll call the Economic Development Committee meeting to order for Tuesday, April 11th, and we do have a quorum present.
Okay. We have 7 joint items that include 2 that are closed session. The first 3 deal with tax increment district, either boundary amendments or project plan amendments. Important to note that this is really step 1 in a lengthy process, but none of these items authorize any spending or implementation of any of the proposed plans. So item number 1 is discussion and possible action regarding tax incremental district number 3, project plan amendment in order to add projects and project costs. And you'll see that we've got some information in the meeting packets. There was a memo from the finance director outlining the significant changes that would be made to each of those tax increment districts should we decide to approve the plan. So, Mary Ann, did you want to present on district number 3, and we'll take each one separately, or just run through the high points of your memo as far as what future projects may come to fruition? None of these yet are formally committed to, it looks like, but they're all potential.
Right. So TID 3, the major projects that are outlined in the plan. First of all, TID 3 is a downtown blight district based on the statutes. And so we have several groupings of projects to consider for TID 3. One of them being downtown, it always seems to be parking. The McClellan ramp has reached the end of its useful life. Given COVID and the raising of the mall, our parking demands have changed dramatically. This proposal includes the demolition of the ramp and then some surface parking. There's some parking to the south of the McClellan ramp. I think the suggestion is we turn that full block into parking and do some restoration work, as well as some parking lot expansion down to support the riverfront activity and athletic park. I don't know if you've driven down at the riverfront, but the parking is in high demand down there as well. And with the water utility relocating, that has freed up some space that we could use for parking, at least on the short term. Land acquisition, we have $2.2 million budgeted. There are 2 prime sites that we're interested in. Number 1, for redevelopment purposes and also for River Edge Trail expansion. The property north of Great Lakes Cheese, and I think Liz is going to expand on that
Correct.
later on in the agenda. We'd like to acquire that. That will create a larger piece for redevelopment and give us an opportunity to move the riverfront edge further north and actually connect to Gilbert Park. As well as on the west side, the MBX property, we've been trying to get access for River Edge Trail expansion on that side for a number of years now. And so that provides ways to connect our existing River Edge Trail in a pretty impressive way. Street improvements include Fulton Street, North 1st to 7th, and then First River Drive from McIndoe 300 feet north of Fulton. If you've driven by, in those areas, those pavements are in bad condition. There's been a lot of redevelopment activity that has contributed to some of the, degradation of the streets. So we'd like to reconstruct that. The budget is $2.4 million. Trail development of $1.9 million. That includes the MBX trail, the graphic packaging, and then MBX South, and the east side north to Gilbert Park. And then we do have funds for site work and remediation, including demolition of Dive Point, some work for the Wausau Chemical, Water Plant, and MBX sites, and then $600,000 in developer incentives. Just a couple other points that I want to make is the plan does specify that we would be making project costs both in the district and in the half-mile radius, and it, describes in which condition those expenditures are going to take, and it does have a map in there that highlights the locations of all of the improvements and the boundaries and the half-mile radius.
Okay. And then following this particular session, assuming these two committees move the plan forward, we would then see this acted upon at the Plan Commission, a second time at Finance, Joint Review Board, and then finally the council ultimately, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
And there is a cash flow in there. It does not assume any growth in increment. It shows that we would be able to fund these projects and still close the district with a profit.
Okay. Finance Committee members, any questions for Mary Ann on the item proposed for TID 3? If not, is there a motion from someone from Finance to approve the project plan amendment for TID 3? Motion by Martins, is there a second? Second from Watson. Further discussion from Finance? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I guess I do have a question here. What is the net impact, if any, on the 12% TID cap that we're currently
So-
constrained by?
This doesn't impact the 12% cap. This is adding project costs and projects. And so the 12% cap is not applicable and doesn't create an issue.
Okay. Further discussion from Finance? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries.
So then would I have any questions, I guess, from the Economic Development Committee? Yeah, Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So piggybacking off of Older Denny's question, it may not be relevant to this item, but am I correct that it will be relevant a couple items down when we discuss the subtraction of properties and kind of that as a workaround to prior approaches?
So the 13% isn't applicable when you're doing a subtraction. But, I can say that we're currently at 13.38%. What our actual rate will be once the subtraction takes place, we don't know at this time. What has to happen is once we do this change, we will turn in all of our compliance reports to the state of Wisconsin. They will then evaluate it. They have not released, because the property values that they're going to be looking at are the January 1 of 2023 values. So they have not determined what the equalized value is yet or what our ratio is. So once that is all calculated in August, they would release what our percentage is. But this subtraction will comply with the state law, and because it's a subtraction, the 13% doesn't impact its eligibility for approval.
Thank you.
Alder Hinkie.
It says in here, there was something that the state did to give us a Fifth Amendment. Are we limited how many amendments we can make
So
on a TID?
you can have as many plan amendments as you want. You can only adjust your boundaries 4 times. With this district, we have 5, but we're not amending the boundaries at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve this item, number 1?
I'll move.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other questions before we vote? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
All right, 4-1.
Okay. That brings us to item 2, which is similar. That one is discussion and possible action regarding tax incremental district number 8, project plan amendment in order to add projects and project costs. We'll switch over to Mary Ann to recap her memo on that. This one seems a little shorter. fewer things on that one, so.
This district is a rehabilitation district. Again, we're not changing the boundaries, we're just adding expenses. We have 2.7 million for the reconstruction of 17th Avenue from Stewart to Elm Street. This obviously is a very expensive project, yet an important project because it supports a lot of businesses in that area and a lot of traffic. We had tried to fit this into our regular 2023 budget, and we're not able to do so. At that time, Finance, I think, recommended that we go and try to do a plan amendment. We also have the Washington Street Siphon Project, which is water or sewer? Sewer project, along with a retaining wall in the same area for $850,000. We have North 8th Avenue reconstruction, including utilities of $1.5 million, and then other street improvements like asphalt overlay or pavement replacement or concrete replacement of just over $1 million. Again, this district and the plan amendment proposes spending within the district and the half-mile radius. There, again, is a map in the plan that shows the location of the projects, and the cash flow shows that we will be able to support these public improvements with the increment that's currently generated.
Okay. Does anyone from Finance have questions on the TID 8 amendment? If not, is there a motion from Finance to approve the TID 8 amendment? Motion from Martins, is there a second? Second from Lukens. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries.
All right, any questions from the Economic Development Committee about this TID? Yep.
Coming from SISM, is that 17th Avenue project a state project?
Yes.
But this will just finance our
Yes,
utilities, right? Correct?
right, and any pavement that we have that we're responsible for.
Okay.
Because there is, I think we have a large share of that. Yeah.
Okay.
If no other questions, is there a motion to approve that amendment to TID 8?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, four, one against.
Okay. And item number 3, discussion and possible action regarding tax increment District Number 12, project plan boundary amendment in order to subtract territory and add projects and project costs.
So again, this is the only one that is a boundary change. The map indicates that we're removing a number of parcels, both on the north and south ends of the boundaries, 29 parcel removals, and then 7 parcel additions. Those 7 parcels all represent parcels that used to be in the mall or the Sears footprint. There were several new parcels created in that area due to the fact that we had demolished the building, and because of some of the TID boundaries, they had to create small parcels. So some of these parcels are very small slivers of land. But in addition to making those changes, it would fund the street pedestrian utility construction for the street grids that have been presented and considered by council, about 1.3 million, and that's $6.7 million. A remediation in that same area of about 1.3 million. Parking improvements to Sears and Penny's ramp, 700,000. And then the 2 developer incentives currently either approved by council or under consideration. The first one is T-Wall. That is total developer payments of $10,800,000. Again, these are pay-as-you-go payments, so they have no negative impact on the district over its life. And then the other one is the developer incentives to Swiderski. That the total payments are $9,277,000. That agreement is on tonight's agenda for consideration. In all of these situations, this is a plan. It's not a budget. It's not an authorization to spend. The budget and the authorization to spend really are what allow us to execute any of the projects that are listed here. So without a budget or other spending authority, we wouldn't be able to do any of the projects that are there on the plans.
Okay. So with item number 3, any questions from finance on that item? Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. So ostensibly, we already have a T-wall agreement in place, and we have in principle a handshake with Swiderski. So what did we commit to if we have not, we don't have a source for it? Or is our vote here going to affect what we previously agreed to?
So the agreements that you signed or authorized signature of are contingent on a TID amendment, because without the TID amendment, the project in T-Wall's situation, the project would not fall within a TID boundary, so there would be no increment to share. So that agreement that you signed was contingent on the plan amendment. This has been kind of a complicated situation because you don't want to add parcels in the district until you tear down the buildings, because otherwise you create basically negative increment, because there was a building there when it was created and now the property has less value because that building is not there. So you have to wait until your building is down, and then we've been waiting so that the assessor could do their work on the January 1 values, so we would know what parcels to remove from the district. So we really couldn't do anything until just recently.
So essentially, we put the cart before the horse, and we've written checks we can't necessarily cash. I mean,
Well, we haven't written any checks because the agreement is void if we don't do the plan amendment. We've, adopted several developers agreements without the TID plans being in place for the exact reason that I've discussed, is if there's going to be redevelopment and there's buildings that have to come down, we take the buildings down first and then put the property in the district.
Which essentially reduces the land value to basically 0, and then you recapture the increment from the growth once the new
Correct.
building builds.
Yep.
Because the developer payments in this particular arrangement are coming from the taxes paid on the new building by the developer after they've taken the risk. So that, none of that takes flight if we don't reclaim the increment in the first place. So I think that's kind of where we left off with TID 12. Does anyone have any other questions on TID 12? If not, is there a motion from finance to approve the adjustment to TID 12? Motion from Martins, is there a second? Second by Watson, further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries.
All right, the Economic Development Committee, do you guys have questions about this one?
It might not be for economic development, maybe more for finance, but, so we have to, the value of what we remove has to equal the value of what we're adding?
So
Basically.
the math is that you look back at the values when you created the district, and those values need to be more than the values that you're adding to the district today.
Okay, I'll have to think about that for a little bit.
So is it the difference between
The
basically
27
0 and whatever the finished building is going to be?
No, it's
Or-
the values of the parcels that are being removed, their
Oh.
value at 2017, and then the parcels that you're adding, their value January 1 of 2023.
Okay.
And so that's why, again, one of the reasons why we've had to delay is, one, wait for the buildings to come down, then the assessor needs to do their work on all of these parcels that used to be the mall. And the parcels were being divided, so that was another step in the process because we needed to know what that impact to the boundaries were going to be on that. So,
Thank you. That
Yeah.
helps a lot.
Alder Lukens?
So I'm just gonna ask you to repeat something.
That's fine.
So the values of the buildings that will be removed.
the
Is that what you
parcels.
said? The parcels. I mean
Parcels.
the parcels, the parcels.
So that would
Those-
include the land, the building, and any personal property values that were on those parcels back in the beginning of 2017.
Those have to be more
Yes,
than what is being added. So it's like
Correct.
29 parcels that are being removed.
Yep.
And what is it?
7.
Okay, that are being added.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yep, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when we're doing reverse TIF activity, we're paying on the back end from the increment generated. Is it true that the district cannot be closed out until that's been fully paid to the developer on the back end?
well, I guess I would have to look at the agreement. Generally, there's something in the agreement to try to protect the developer. I don't know specifically what this agreement says. I do know that generally, any increment that we pay to the developers each year is based on the fact that we have to have a budget in place to fund that. Otherwise, we don't make a payment. But I would say generally, we wouldn't close the district until we had completed the agreement.
And maybe we can direct the question to our guest on screen, too.
We just noticed that he turned it on.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the obligation that we ultimately agreed to with T-Wall, it's an investment risk for T-Wall. So if it's not paid over the duration that we were talking about or the amount in the TID has run out of years, that's a risk on T-Wall, and the city is not obligated to pay any more than they already have prior to the district closing.
Thank you, and perhaps I can make it a little simpler, distill it. Is it true that we cannot be closing the district while we're in those planned or anticipated increment payments to the developer? I think with T-Wall, that was spanned over perhaps 21 or 22 years.
Yeah, so during the obligation, you would not be able to close the TID because that agreement is still valid. But if the TID ends, that's when the agreement is not valid anymore. You don't have to pay any more than you've already paid.
Thank you. So on that note, I think that's important for the public and the committees to know that as long as we're paying out on the planned increment over these years, and with T-Wall, it's over 20 years, that we can't be closing the district to reap any benefits of closure. So the longer these agreements go on, not only is there millions of dollars more in interest, but we're not able to close the district. I think that's important to note. And also, even though, as it's been brought up in other meetings, that there's less risk with a reverse TIF type scenario, we're still committing massive amounts of future city revenue to these projects any way you cut it. So there may be less risk involved, but they still can have a profound financial impact for the city. Thank you. Oh, and Madam Chair, I've got one more question, may I ask? And it's on a different theme. So on page 50, you can see the half-mile buffer with TID 12 that was laid out in the packet. And I didn't see any of these areas or projects in the packet tonight, but I see that the half-mile buffer encompasses, say, 700 Grand Avenue. Now, all the submittals for that with the RFP had been asking for TIF money, and I thought, well, where's that going to come from? Because I don't think at the time there was available TIF funds, but the way this boundary is laid out on page 50, it would encompass 700 Grand Avenue, as well as on the southwest side, some properties targeted for development currently. So I just want to make sure, as we're entertaining this tonight, then there is no planned desire to use TIF for 700 Grand Avenue or the southwest side where that half-mile buffer is drawn. Is that correct?
Well, that was definitely a topic of discussion from staff about using this district to fund 700 Grand Avenue. But it's not in the plan today. So if we wanted to do that, we'd have to come through the process to amend the district to add project costs. We wouldn't be modifying the territory, but we would be adding those project costs. So we would have to go through the entire process of amending the plan, bringing it to finance, having a public hearing with the plan commission, convening the joint review board for their initial meeting, and then bringing the plan amendment to council and seeking joint review board's approval. In that situation, because it would be in a half-mile radius, any new value that it created would not be available to pay any developer incentives. That makes it a little bit more challenging when you're in that situation, because typically it's the new value that you're using to fund your projects. And so this would have project costs, that 700 Grand Avenue, but there would be no increment, new additional increment to pay for that. So we, at this point, given the fact that they don't know if they have their tax credits and it's a ways out, it's not in the plan today.
Thank you. So in conclusion, the city is not planning at this time to use any of the activity or votes tonight on other developments that we haven't been briefed on at this time. Is that correct?
Ask that question again?
Does the
got
city have an
lost there.
intent to use TIF from this district currently on projects that have not been listed
No.
in the packet or that we're voting on tonight?
No,
Okay, thank you.
not that I'm aware of.
Any other questions? Because it's our turn, right?
Yep.
All right. So would there be a motion to approve that modification to TID 12?
I move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, I think 4 to,
Okay. So we have, those three are done. Now, item number 4, discussion and possible action, approving development agreement with SC Swiderski LLC at River Lot, lots 6, 7, and 8. And so I will turn it over to Director Brodek to kind of tee up this project. We do have some people in our audience that have requested public comment with this item tonight, so we'll accept their public comment after Director Brodek and Development Manager Pfeiffer have presented, if that's okay.
Sure. So you may recall that this, we had RFP'd this property last year around the summer for development. We received some great proposals for it. This committee, actually, I believe, Economic Development, chose the Swiderski project, and so we are here today to kind of be reminded about what that project is. It's been a few months since we've all looked at it, and then walk through the development agreement. So I'm going to first turn it over to Jackie and Courtney from Swiderski, and then Randy Pfeiffer is going to brief us on the development agreement, and then we've got Keith Dahl from Ellers on to explain the TIF analysis.
Okay,
So-
and we'll conduct all of that in open session, and then this item, I believe, is this one also posted for closed session, so the committee's actual deliberation will happen in closed session. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Jackie McElroy, Director at SC Swiderski, and I'm here with Courtney Wolf, our Business Development Manager. We were last at a meeting with you in August going over our proposed plans for the River Life North parcel. Since then, our team has been working very closely with city staff along with the city attorney for the development agreement. And that agreement represents all of our initial discussions that we had back in August. But since it's been many months, Courtney's going to do a quick overview to remind you what the project is about.
Move to the next slide, please. SDS Wausau is a proposed mixed-use development featuring 200 market-rate apartments in the newly designed 7-story Sterling building. The units will include studio suites, 1 and 2 bedrooms, as well as penthouse suites. All the apartment units have been handpicked from extensive demographic research and local knowledge of the Wausau rental market. In addition to living space, the project will feature 2 ground-level commercial retail spaces. There will be ground-level, street, and ramp parking options available as well.
The Sterling building does have a community room with high-end finishes like what is rendered here. It will also have a conference room, a yoga studio, a fitness room, patio and grill area, and a rooftop terrace for gathering.
Due to a high groundwater table, we had to get creative with the parking on the site. There will be 44 parking spaces within the actual building, and then there'll be an additional parking ramp that you see here, providing 280 parking spaces for our tenants. And in addition to that, we will provide 21 exterior parking spaces that you can see here around the parking ramp. Those will be open to the public. That's going to create additional options for those who are looking to walk in the area, shop, eat, and spend time in the River Life community. The walkability of the area was a key consideration for this project and at the heart of our design. As you can see here, we have an open-air breezeway leading to the commercial area. The opportunity to move through the city along the river without a vehicle is a special feature that not every city can offer. Not only will the addition of market-rate apartments boost the commercial activity for the River Life District and the city of Wausau, it'll also provide a place for residents where they can live, work, play, and build lasting memories on this thriving urban waterfront.
So the city's assessor has provided an approximate value of $29.4 million for this project. So our incentive package was structured around that. So we are looking for approval of that development agreement so we can move forward with the rest of our planning phase and get this project into construction in June 2024. And so we're open for any questions.
Finance Committee, any questions for the developer?
Economic development questions.
I think we're good. We'll bring up
Thank you.
Director Pfeiffer. Welcome.
Thank you. As you saw in your packet, I had a memo in there kind of highlighting a number of the things that have already been discussed today. I'm just going to go high-level overview some of that. If we have any questions, happy to answer them. But construction for this project is proposed to start in '24. I think the commencement date is June of '24, with a completion date of 2027. They mentioned earlier the anticipated development cost slightly over $51.8 million. This project is located in TID number 12, with an estimated market value of the project will be over $29 million. The city engaged Ellers as part of our review process to assist us with reviewing the developer's application for TIF assistance and determining the appropriate funding required to close the public financing gap on this project. The city has proposed a pay-as-you-go or reverse TIF in this case, in which the developer gets a portion of the tax revenue they generated with their development returned to them after successfully completing that project. With that, Keith Dahl from Ellers is here to explain and kind of walk through their analysis that they completed on our behalf. It's really beneficial in working with them and having a third party really looking at these numbers, not just going back and forth, we deserve this, we think you should get this. Keith's so valuable in being able to go through this, look at the actual numbers, and provide us with that analysis. So if nobody has any questions, we'll turn it over to Keith.
Seeing no questions,
Thank you.
take it from there, Keith.
Thank you very much. Ultimately, similar to the T-wall project that we discussed at the end of last year, with the Swiderski project, we went through a similar perform analysis process, which that ultimately entails reviewing the developer's budget, their sources and uses, reviewing construction costs, reviewing their land acquisition price, their construction financing fees, professional service fees, developer fee, making sure that those are all in line with what we're realizing or seeing throughout the market within Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's typically what we call our general industry standards. So like projects, we're comparing this development against them. We also take a look at the operating performance, so their projected rents, their projected expenses in relation to these same projects for general industry standards. We look at a CoStar market rate report to understand are the rents achievable, are they on the upper bounds of what we're seeing in the market, are they lower than that, can they push their rents a little bit more, and so forth. Ultimately, what we're looking at is their return on investment. We want to make sure that any public assistance being provided doesn't unduly enrich the developer. And so we want to tie that back to a return that ultimately attracts the necessary capital for the project to become financially feasible to move forward. But it's making sure that we're maximizing the private amount of sources for financing versus minimizing the public assistance amount being provided to the project. So we're trying to ultimately provide the minimum amount to make the project financially feasible. During our review, ultimately what was requested by the developer was unachievable with the remaining term left in the TID. And it would have been substantially more than what we ultimately agreed to in concept with the developer that's currently under consideration by both boards and commissions. We ultimately determined that TIF assistance over a 16-year period is warranted. This ultimately amounts to a total sum, so a future value sum of $9,277,000. However, the developer is going to monetize this future revenue stream. It's no cash that's being exchanged by the city up front. It's a pledge to provide a percentage of the annually available increment over a specified time period to the development. So the developer is ultimately taking this pay-go note, this municipal revenue obligation from the city, and bringing it to a financial lending institution to monetize that for upfront costs of construction. Ultimately, with the interest rate that they're projecting to receive from the bank, they're able to get about $5.5 million to benefit the sources and uses in their project. So that's ultimately derived by the total amount of increment over 16 years that we're projecting, and this is a portion. We've agreed to, from years 1 to 5, to provide 90% of the available tax increment to the benefit of this project, and then over the remaining years till 16, we're looking at 75% of the available increment. This ultimately leaves about 4 years at the back end of the TID for the city to collect 100% of the tax increment. So in total, with this development, but for this assistance, this project would not be moving forward. You're ultimately looking at providing a public assistance package in the total amount of $9.277 million, but the city, over that same time period, with the remaining term of the TID, will also be receiving about $5.5 million to use on administration expenses for overseeing the TID, but also public infrastructure costs that they have planned, they have financed, or projects that are coming in the future. So with that, I can pause and answer any additional questions that may arise from the memo.
Does anyone have questions for Ellers about the analysis? Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. Could you tell us, was there a difference in what was proposed 6 or 7 months ago to what this final development agreement is today? Is there a delta of any unexpected expenses, costs, economic factors?
Great question. I can say Swiderski was requesting a principal amount of $7.25 million roughly over the remaining term of the TID. And we ultimately, looking at this from a present value MRO perspective, we negotiated that down with city staff to the $5.49 million that's being considered this evening. In addition to that, we all are most likely aware of the rising interest rate and construction price environment that we're currently in. From 2021, we saw from 2020 to 2021, we saw about a 11.5% increase in construction costs. From 21 to 22, we saw about a 14.1% increase in construction costs. So over that time, construction costs have increased by about 26%. Historically, when you look year over year, construction costs have increased anywhere from 2 to 4%. So it was a substantial amount that we saw over those years. However, the thing that we noted with this project, in 2023, we are starting to see some price softening based on what the Federal Reserve is doing with increasing the borrowing rate to combat that inflation, to combat rising construction pricing and so forth. So we are pleasantly surprised to see the total development costs where they are at. Unlike the T-Wall project, they were a little bit higher than this one, but that this is ultimately the direction where we want construction pricing to go, is to get under control. So, I mean, as far as what has changed since we initially looked at this at the end of last year, I would say the amount of assistance that they requested versus what we're considering this evening, but then also prices going down a little bit. However, interest rates have increased a little bit, so still necessitates the return to get a reasonable return on investment.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional questions on the financial analysis? Okay. With that, we had a couple of people that have requested public.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
pardon me, I thought you were asking for Finance Committee. I do, on the ED Committee, have a
Okay.
question. Sorry
No,
for the
go ahead.
interruption.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. So
Thank-
we can take ED question and then we'll bring up public comment if.
Thank you. So yes, you'd handled the T-Wall deal as well, if I'm understanding correctly. And the same question had arisen at that time with the way that the percentage of public involvement was being characterized. And I think when you looked at the T-Wall deal in terms of the total amount of public money with the principal and interest and the actual minimum assessed value contractually, that was actually then 45% public involvement, if I recall correctly. With this, you're using the 51 million to develop or build this development in relation to the public involvement of $9.2 million. But I think often when the public looks at that ratio of public funds to what they're getting ultimately with tax revenue and so forth, it's looking at assessed value. So in this case, when you use the 51 million compared to the 9.2 million of public monies, I think you put it at perhaps 18%. But if my understanding is correct, that the minimum assessed value in the contract is $29 million, then in relation to 9.2 million in public monies, that puts public involvement at 31%. Is that correct?
Well, I guess I'm not 100% sure on the percentages. When we look at the public involvement, we take a look at it as far as a present value calculation in the sources and uses in relation to what it's going to cost to develop the apartment. So with the Swiderski project before us tonight, the present value amount that they would be able to secure for that, the upfront assistance through the bank is the 5.49 million, which works out to be about 10.6% of total development costs when you look at it at the construction cost, the 51.8 million. But there is principal and interest on that, so we do want to take that into consideration. So the total amount is $9,277,000, but that total amount is not going to Swiderski's pockets. That's going for them to secure the upfront assistance that they need to make the project financially feasible and move forward. This was the same way that we looked at it with the T-Wall project. Unfortunately, the assessor obviously thinks that this is going to come in less than construction costs based on the inflated environment that we're currently in. When it comes to apartment projects, specifically the commercial side of it with a revenue producing real estate venture, they not only take a look at construction costs for assessment purposes, but they're also taking a look at your revenue and your expenses and your net operating income, and ultimately what the capitalization rate is of the project. So when you take a look at it from that lens, the 29 million that the Swiderski project is potentially going to be assessed at, it is reasonable, even though their construction costs are higher than what that's projected to be.
Thank you. And then one final question. I think we talk about the principal and the interest. We did it on the T-Wall deal as well. And I think, looking at the interest on that, it was 6 million principal and 4.8 million interest, if I recall correctly. And you've seen millions of dollars of interest in this deal. In your professional opinion, then, with reverse TIF over such long periods of time, is that one of the drawbacks, that they can accumulate millions of dollars in interest when paid out over long periods of time?
Sure, there is going to be an interest level component to it. With the T-Wall project, I think we were at 5 or 5.5% for the interest rate, if I'm not mistaken. But since that time, interest rates have increased again. So you're right, with the Swiderski project in front of us tonight, the interest rate is anticipated to be 6%, though it may actually be higher than that, but we're not considering that. We're still looking at it as if it was 6%. So as far as the interest rates go, they do have a component as far as the time length. You're going to be paying more with interest. But without this public assistance, this project would not be moving forward. And then the city wouldn't be able to get the percentage of increment from this project that they would be collecting as well. With the T-Wall project, they're going to be getting 20% of the available increment over the remaining term of the TID. And with this project, it's slightly different. You get 10% in years 1 through 5, 25% in years 6 through 16, and then 100% thereafter. So I mean, there is another perspective to take a look at this as well, with what is the city going to get in return in addition to the increment. They have availability to use that towards public infrastructure. In addition, they're also getting a quality apartment project that can provide homes for several families throughout the Wausau area.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comment about the financial analysis? If not, we'll make way for some public comment before we consider item number 5 and then closed session for both. Anyone here from the public who would wish to make public comment, come forward now. State your name and address for the record and make your comments, please.
Good evening. My name is Dave Ackman. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce, 209 West Washington, Wausau, Wisconsin. Been here before to talk about housing and economic development in the Greater Wausau community, and especially tonight on behalf of SC Swiderski, an investor into this community over years, decades, putting their hard work and effort to develop this community. And I'm going to speak to you a little bit, too, from my perspective, not only in economic development for what we're doing here in the city of Wausau, but I've lived at River Life for 3 years now. And I can tell you just from both perspectives, the economic development impacts, the implications. For a quality builder, like Swiderski here in this community has over time learned, and what they have presented in this picture is an absolute necessity for the river, for this investment to take place on the river. Watching that property between River Life and Wausau on the Water sitting vacant, this is a prime opportunity with a quality developer who's going to put a massive investment. You're talking about 200 housing units that time out right in terms of the cycle of different market rate housing and other opportunities here in the community. Leveraging the riverfront, what it was for, what it was repositioned to be, this is it. The experience of living down on the river, I can tell you, because as I watch out my balcony and what we have there and an opportunity for people to not only enjoy living there, but to be involved where those businesses are going to take place, it's going to help the other commercial development, because you talked about it tonight. What's going to proceed forward to the north. This is majorly important, and what can happen to the south, and tied down to the downtown project. This is a critical project. The parking. The parking, absolutely. When you have the units, the 280, and then you have the 21 extra, it's going to accommodate that foot traffic that's down there. It's a quality investment. Walkability. What you've created, you, and when I say that, I'm talking about the city leaders. What you are creating and have created in this community along that riverfront, which ties down all the way to Thomas Street. Hopefully we can get going south and further north. This development becomes a landmark. It becomes a landmark on the riverfront, but for the city of Wausau. This is a game changer on the riverfront, absolutely. So I'm here to advocate for this project. The amenities, I wanted to touch base really quick on the amenities. I'm entering, I'm going to hit my 60th year this coming weekend. And I can tell you that the amenities that they offer in this facility, my facility, they're multi-generational. So are you thinking this is going to be all for young professionals? Absolutely not. What this is going to do is attract those people who are ready to get out of their homes in the surrounding communities, come down here and open up those homes for younger families. This is part of addressing our housing challenge. I'm here to support, and you got a great opportunity with SC Swiderski. They're quality, they're local, they've done this before, and they're ready to do this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there additional public comment at this time? Okay, we've got two. So Tony and then the gentleman behind you also.
My name is Tony Brown. I live at 715 North Fifth Avenue, Wausau. Unfortunately, I just got a hold of this afternoon. I've been a little remiss in attending your meetings. Keith made a comment that we're going to have homes for several families. What is the truth of the matter in this development? Between studio suites, and one bedroom, you have 178 units out of 200. That's 89%. I don't know too many families that can live in one-bedroom apartments. That's just the fact on this development. It's not for families. That's okay. I still support it because the downtown area needs it. But so far, the only thing that's going on downtown is housing, apartment rentals. There really isn't much commercial development. And I hate to say this because I'm sure there's a lot of disagreement. Mosinee has a more developed downtown than Wausau does. And you might want to ask yourself why that is. Also, a second point, I don't see any provisions made in any of these developments for affordable housing for the people that are sleeping under the bridges.
Thank you for your comments. Next gentleman.
My name is Mike Vanderloop, Wausau on the Water, 1300 North River Drive, Wausau. Myself and the other owners of Wausau on the Water are very excited about the new development south of us. We're also very excited that a local company like Swiderski may be doing this. We do have a lot of concern about the parking during and after construction and looking forward to working on any challenges that may arise with that. We respectfully request that all staging of construction materials and employee parking for the construction people not be in the main parking lots, which, as I don't know if any of you know, but we do fill them up.
Yep.
Including the street. We try to keep our staff all parking down as far as possible, aside from the closing personnel, so that they aren't walking down at night in the dark. When the project is complete, if parking shortage is still an issue, we would request that the north side of River Drive be reconstructed and allow for additional parking. We also strongly recommend the water department and chemical sites be used as additional parking. We appreciate all the hard work the city staff, the council members, and community development have done to get this worthwhile project to this point. We wish the best of luck in making great decisions, as this is not an easy process and requires careful, critical thinking. I speak on behalf of myself, Michael Vanderloop, and my business partners, Evan Greenwood and Bill Greenwood.
Okay, thank you for that. Any additional comment? If not, we'll not yet take action on this item because we're going to tee up item number 5, and we have closed session posted for both. So item 5 is discussion and possible action approving offer to purchase county materials property at 103, 105, and 111 Winton Street, and that portion of 402 to 406 Winton Street lying west of the railroad tracks and the related budget modification. So we'll turn it over to Liz.
Sure. So my memo lays out the gist of what we're going to discuss here today. The city was approached with an opportunity to purchase vacant portions of the land that is owned or was owned by County Materials, is in the process of being transferred to a new owner along the North Riverfront. So like I said, the memo outlining the proposed acquisition and the strategic reasons for it is included in your packet. Just a brief synopsis on those strategic reasons for the potential acquisition. It does, and we talked about this a little bit earlier today, it allows for the extension of the trail further north. One of the things that we've been talking about including in that property acquisition is a railroad crossing that would allow then the north end of the Riverfront Trail to connect to Gilbert Park eventually. The new owner has offered to do the trail grading for us this year, and it puts us in control of this property that would be contiguous and adjacent parcels next to the parcels that we own, the former Great Lakes Cheese site and that parcel, I guess. And that would also include the next phase of the River Life or the Riverfront development, being that we would be looking to develop further north first, then the south portion that includes the water treatment plant and Wausau chemical facility. It also allows, of course, for the extension of River Drive to allow for that redevelopment. So those are the strategic reasons I just wanted to quickly outline in open session, but we can take it to closed if that's the flavor of it.
Okay. And so with that, we have closed session wording for each item. Would someone from finance read the closed session language under item 6? Go ahead, Mike. Thank you.
Right, I make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to 19.85 sub 1 sub E of the Wisconsin statutes for deliberating and negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investigating of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session relating to approval of SCS Wausau LLC development agreement.
Okay. Is there a second for Mike's motion for closed session? Second by Watson. We'll do a roll call vote for closed session. Watson?
Aye.
Lukens?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Denny?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well.
So I think I just need a motion to go to closed session. You don't have to read the whole thing from ED.
We can take the same motion.
Yep,
so.
so does somebody move to do?
So moved.
Alder
Oh, Tom, go ahead.
Killian, yep.
I'll second.
And then, actually, Alder Lukens.
Even better.
All right, so roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye. Alder Rasmussen.
Aye.
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 Awesome. So
Okay, and then if someone from finance would read the closed session language for item 7 also? Go ahead, Carol, thank you.
So I motion that we go into closed session pursuant to 19.85 sub 1 sub E of the Wisconsin statutes for deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session relating to approval purchasing properties located at 103, 105, 111 Winton Street and portion 402 to 406 Winton Street, lying west of the railroad tracks.
Okay, is there a second to Alder Lukens' motion for closed session? Second by Martins, roll call vote. Denny?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Lukens?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye as well.
Is there a motion from Economic Development to go to closed session? Alder Killian? Alder Hanky, second. Roll call vote. Alder Hanky?
Aye.
Alder Rasmussen?
Aye.
Alder Lucan?
Aye.
And Alder Killian?
Aye.
And then aye.
Okay, so we'll adjourn to the Maple Room for deliberation, and if there's open session action to be taken, we'll return to this chamber to take it prior to the start of the Common Council meeting. Thank you.